Good Monday morning, everybody. Welcome on into your FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. It's Monday, so it is time for the Stock Out. And we've got Grace Sharkey, one of our lovely hosts and writers of our retail CPG-focused community. Grace, thanks for joining us. Last week was a pretty big news week, right? We saw the port strike start and end. We saw panic buying across the majority of the eastern United States. Again, a ridiculous notion, but one that makes CPG companies happy because, more dollars made.
Sure.
And now we are moving into the week after all of those things. How was your week? How was your weekend?
I didn't panic buy. I fortunately bought my household toilet paper a week ago, so I pre-panic bought, I guess you could say, in a way. It was nice because during these situations, I get family members who reach out because they actually care about my expertise in this area. So, you know what? Nice big head, got to answer some questions from the normies not in the supply chain, and happy to see a nice resolution before we went into the weekend.
I've got to say, nothing makes me want to be a keyboard warrior more than having supply chain experience and seeing misinformation spread on TikTok during a crisis like this one, a crisis that wasn't even a real crisis. But I digress. Let's talk about an actual real crisis that is plaguing the supply chain industry, and one that we have been continuously talking about for what feels like years now, and that's cybersecurity and these very real cyber threats that are continuing to be an issue, not just in attacks, but also in very real dollars that are costing these companies. That cost eventually gets filtered down to the consumer, which is, of course, what everybody cares about. We've got a new supply chain cybersecurity study coming out from Cloudflare. Talk to me a little bit about what it showed.
It's interesting because I think this report in particular is going to really showcase to the audience how important it is to be making the right investments when it comes to your cybersecurity. So, of course, as always, we know, thanks to truckstop.com, that there's been a 400% rise in double brokering in particular. But what this survey goes into is, how is that double brokering happen? How are these fraudulent activities happening in general? And across Fortune 500 companies, a big part of this is impersonation, phishing attempts, emails, and cybersecurity issues. They found that over the last year, Fortune 500 firms were reporting up to 10 impersonation incidents per month. And that's average. So I'm sure they saw a lot more in some sectors in particular. And a lot of it is happening through phishing. Right? 35% of all email threats have come through, whether it's SMS, social media, or even email. And we all know phishing attempts, right? You get a text message from someone pretending to be Craig Fuller or your CEO at your own company asking you to do something, or maybe it's an email that looks quite familiar. Those business email compromise, what they call BECs, have actually, since 2013, cost companies $50 billion. And logistics firms have been just as vulnerable in that too. So we talk about AI, we talk about a lot of the technology and the type of people you need to hire in order to pull off those investments. Well, I'm hoping that people are realizing too that those investments in your IT people, your technology leaders in particular, should also be looking at cybersecurity as a big topic when it comes to what they're doing within your four walls at your company.
I think that that's a huge call out because people think cybersecurity and their first line of defense is automatically, okay, what systems do we have in place? What software are we using to kind of track and to block this? But reality, people are going to be your first line of defense, right? And making sure that your people who are regularly interacting with these systems, your email systems, your text message systems every single day, have a really good baseline knowledge of what good cybersecurity practices are and are actually adhering to them. I know just personally, anecdotally, and if our cybersecurity team is watching this, I swear I don't do this at FreightWaves, but at some of my other jobs, some of the jobs that previously in the past, I'm guilty of just clicking through the cybersecurity, trainings that we do. Like, okay, obviously I know this, click, 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 right? But that's something that I think is a very good conversation when you're talking about changing your culture. And especially in the logistics industry, when people's work culture is so hyper-focused on do as much as you can volume-wise in a workday, make quick calls, respond quickly to emails, you lose a lot of the discernment that you have in your job practice when you are moving that quickly. Like if you're a broker and you're receiving 85 different loads to be covered, you're not looking at every single email that those loads are coming from. There's an opportunity that there's one little misspelling in a carrier email address that's not actually real. You click on it, you send them money to pick up a load, and boom, you've just been double brokered.
Well, and another big piece of this too is how do you prevent this stuff from happening? And I think an issue that we see across brokerages in particular is permission settings, right? Do your carrier reps have the ability to log into your sales systems? Do your sales reps have the ability to log into certain carrier systems? What permissions are you setting within your operations that silo individuals into specific areas? And I think to go back to the quickness of things, I think that's often looked at a second concern behind how quickly a load can be booked and covered, and who is doing what and who can, of course, get into what systems, right, becomes the second aspect to that conversation. And I think we're going to quickly see that change. I think when we talk about automation, or you see a company like RXO in particular, right, who's really pride themselves on how much automation that they've included inside their business model. I can guarantee you that also includes some really incredible cybersecurity measures, especially think of the customers that they're taking care of, that are making sure that if a bad guy does get into their systems, it's going to be difficult to reach certain numbers, addresses, personal information, shipping volume, etc., that could potentially have customers in a bad spot.
We hear a lot of activist organizations in the transportation space, or not necessarily activist organizations, but people who have voices about cybersecurity and about fraud prevention, talking about regulation and talking about making double brokering a true crime and talking about making it legitimately prosecutable fraud. But we're definitely a pretty decent way away from that. In the meantime, consequences for double brokering are very slim, right? If you get caught double brokering, like, you're just off of a broker's carrier list until you go and find another
Yeah.
susceptible broker. There's really no consequence for this. What's it going to take to actually get some real consequences to make these people cut it out? Or do we think that there's just not simply not a world where that is a real consequence?
To be honest with you, I think in order for us to actually start having some big regulators, groups like the DOJ, people who can actually take these criminals to court, it's going to come, I think, mostly from us in reporting that these issues are even happening. I mean, you said it just correctly right there. A lot of times these situations happen. You block a carrier, you might leave a report on a site, but other than that, the local police or local detectives or your local FBI agencies don't know that crime ever happened. And so, I see this often, especially with load board situations where people will gladly message a social media site or tweet about it, but they don't actually reach out to the load board, or they don't reach out to local authorities to get something done about that. And that's not going to change anything. And that was a big part of this survey too, is like, we need to create a culture that's able to fess up when mistakes are made or when things happen, so that we can actually do something to solve these problems. You can't tell the DOJ that something's an issue and they have no data behind it. I think we have some incredible groups and companies that are starting to actually collect and send that information to the right parties. But until we're willing to say, hey, you know what, we might have screwed up, here's the person that you should go after, and actually telling important people who will follow through with that, there's really, I think, a long way from us getting to a point where regulators will seriously have an idea of how to attack this.
We have to publicly shame the bad actors while
Yeah, shame,
privately
shame, yeah,
and shame and
yeah,
while privately supporting the people who end up getting taken advantage of. Because no matter how
yeah,
much cybersecurity training that you have, no matter how many text messages you delete that say, hey, can you go buy me six $500 gift cards? Eventually,
yeah,
everybody is going to do something that ends up compromising something in some way. And shame the perpetrators, don't shame the victims, right?
100%. Yes. Back
All
that a
right.
1,000%. Yeah.
There we go. Put it on a t-shirt. Grace, thank you for joining us this morning. We've got the stock out coming up here in just about 20 minutes or so. So we will catch up with you then and have a great Monday.
Thanks, Kaylee.